127th lesson. The news.
Would you mind if I turned on the television, David? I want to listen to the news.
Of course not.
This is the BBC, it is 6 o'clock, and here is the news. The government today announced that it would resign. The Prime Minister made the announcement in a speech to the Commons this afternoon. The decision was taken in the light of the recent defeat of the government's prices and incomes policy, and also recent defeats in local by-elections. A general election is expected next month. The civil war in Ruritania continues. The military junta, which last month overthrew the government, appealed today to America for military aid. At home again, the recent strike by tool makers at Dagwood's car plant has finished. The men are expected to return to work on Wednesday. A gorilla escaped from London Zoo and attacked 4 passers-by. It was later recaptured safely and returned to its cage. A spokesman for London Zoo said that the animal probably felt lonely. Finally, the weather forecast. The night will be fine with scattered showers in the north. And that's the end of the news.
(128th lesson). Problems.
Oh, Doctor, help me. I keep talking to myself.
Don't worry, sir, it's not uncommon. In fact, thousands of people do it.
Yes, but Doctor, you don't realize how stupid I sound.
At their first meeting, a psychiatrist asked his patient a few standard questions.
What is the difference between a little boy and a dwarf? He asked.
There could be a lot of difference, replied the patient.
What, for example?
Well, the dwarf could be a girl, came the reply.
Hello. I haven't seen you for ages. Have a drink.
No thanks. I never drink.
Really? Why not?
Well, I don't believe in drinking in front of my children. And when I'm away from them, I don't need to drink.
Your girlfriend is good-looking, but she limps.
Well, only when she walks.
129th lesson. A few idioms.
Here are a few idiomatic expressions you might meet when you go to England.
Eich! I've been sitting down for too long. I've got pins and needles in my foot.
He put on his new coat inside out, and you could see the price tag.
He was a very blunt man who called a spade a spade.
It's not difficult to do, but there's a knack to it.
If you wait for a bus at a request stop, you must put out your hand to make the bus stop.
My husband doesn't understand me. He takes me for granted.
When you buy on hire purchase, you make a down payment of £50 and then 16 monthly instalments of £8.
All the fruit had gone bad, but she couldn't stand the idea of throwing it away.
He pretended to be a millionaire, but actually he was broke.
We will have to put off the meeting until next Thursday since nobody is free.
I hope we can eat soon. I'm starved.
Daddy asked me if I wanted a sports car or a yacht. I couldn't care less.
What's on at the Gaumont this week?
Doesn't make any difference to me. I'm hard up.
(130th lesson). Letters.
In this lesson and the next one, we will look at different sorts of letter.
Dear Mike, I'm writing to thank you and your wife for having us last weekend. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves, and it was so nice to see you and Mary again. It was nice, too, to see London after all this time. Life in the suburbs is quiet, but sometimes a bit too quiet. On the way home, we gave a lift to a hitchhiker, a young student going back to university. We had a long chat. You know what Joan's like. And it seems that student life has changed from the life you and I knew. For a start, the kid was studying social anthropology, which I always thought had something to do with monkeys. Then he told us that he didn't attend lectures, but spent his time preparing political meetings. At the weekend, he goes to demonstrations. In our day, it wouldn't have been allowed, would it? Do I sound old and intolerant? I suppose I am, really. Thanks again for your hospitality, and I look forward to seeing you both again soon. Kindest regards to you and your wife. Yours, David.
(131st lesson). A business letter.
Today, we see a letter from someone who is applying for a job.
Dear Sir, I have just read your advertisement in the Situations Vacant column of The Times. I wish to apply for the post of bilingual secretary, which you are offering. I am 23 years old and single, live in London and own a car. After qualifying from St Dunstan's Secretarial College in 1974, I worked for 2 years in France. I was based in the Bordeaux region and was working for an import-export firm. While there, I perfected my French, which I write and speak perfectly. I also type and know both English and French shorthand. I will be free from March the 23rd, as my firm is being taken over by a French company. I hope I may be granted an interview. Yours faithfully, Marjorie Watson.
Perhaps she will be lucky. Here is the reply she received.
Dear Miss Watson, thank you for replying to our advertisement so promptly. If you would like to come to my office on the 23rd of March at 10 o'clock, I will be glad to give you an interview and a short test in bilingual correspondence. Please confirm this appointment by return of post or by telephoning my secretary. Yours sincerely, John Hind.
(132nd lesson). More about letters.
Did you notice how simple the style of the last letter was?
In an English letter, and especially a business letter, it is better to be as direct as possible.
There are no frills or extravagant salutations, and the style is plain.
Our Miss Watson could have written her life history or talked about her brother-in-law, but she did not, and it worked. Simplicity always pays.
In official correspondence, the English use many abbreviations. For example is written e.g.
That is to say, is written i.e. from the Latin id est.
The 24-hour clock is not widely used in Britain. It is used mainly on the railways, which might explain why the trains are so often late.
So instead, English people write AM to indicate the morning and PM for the afternoon and evening. E.g., 10 a.m., 9:30 p.m.
Other abbreviations you might find come after people's names, like B.A., Bachelor of Arts, or MSc, Master of Science.
You could also come across VC or DSO, or any of the numerous military or civilian decorations.
Twice a year, the Queen draws up an honours list, which decorates people who have given service to the nation.
(133rd lesson). Revision and notes. No recording for this lesson.
(134th lesson). A visit to England.
Pierre has met his English friend Tony, and they are drinking beer together on the Champs-Élysées.
So, I hear you've been to England recently. Tell me about your trip.
Well, as I had a long weekend, I decided to take advantage of it. I was going to travel by boat, but then I read an advertisement for the hovercraft. I had never taken one before, so I thought it would be an adventure. I went by train to Boulogne. At the hoverport, I bought some duty-free cigarettes. Then the hovercraft arrived. It was very impressive, like a huge sea monster. Not only does it carry passengers, but also cars, coaches, and even lorries. Eventually, when everyone was on board, the thing rose up on a cushion of air and set off. You couldn't see anything through the windows because there was too much spray. It was fantastic. In only half an hour we were in Dover. My first impressions weren't marvelous. It was raining. As I got out of the hovercraft and headed for the customs, I suddenly realized that I was in a foreign country. Everything was in English, and I suddenly began to panic. I went through the nothing to declare lane and got onto a coach to go to the station. I hadn't spoken a word, and no one had spoken to me.
(135th lesson). Arrival in London.
On the train, I managed to relax a little and look at the countryside. It's true what they say. England is beautiful. And green, even in the rain. I started reading my guidebook and looking for addresses of hotels and bed and breakfasts. The door of my compartment suddenly opened and a man in uniform said,
"Tickets, please!"
The first words someone had spoken to me, and I had understood them. I took my courage in both hands and asked, "What time do we arrive in London?"
"We'll be at Charing Cross in about an hour, sir."
I still understood. I was now very excited. I had found the address of a cheap hotel, and I couldn't wait to arrive. Charing Cross is like any big railway station, big, noisy, and crowded. Outside I found a cab, and gave the driver the address. Driving in London was heaven compared to Paris. Everyone was much more polite and calm, but they were driving on the wrong side of the road. The hotel I had chosen was in Kensington, so I saw quite a lot of London from the cab. At last, we arrived at the hotel. I paid the driver and gave him a tip.
(136th lesson). Conversions.
The hotel was fine. Small but comfortable, and only £35 a night with breakfast. I checked in, put my case in my room, and set out to discover London.
Tony interrupted. "You were lucky, you know. £35 a night is very cheap. You could have paid up to £60, and for a small room too."
"I know," said Pierre. "But London is cheaper than Paris, except the tube. That's much dearer and far less modern than our metro. I decided straight away to walk everywhere. I even bought a pair of shoes. That was a bit of a problem. The salesman asked,
"What size do you take?"
I had no idea. Fortunately, he had a conversion table.
"You take a size 42. That makes you 9.5. And we have a nice pair in the sales. Only £50, reduced from £100.
I got a bargain. I put my old shoes in a bag and walked out in my new ones. I had no idea London was so large. It took me an hour to walk to Trafalgar Square. I wanted to look at the paintings in the National Gallery. I had another nice surprise. It was free.